为什么要学静坐？我快乐吗？无条件的快乐不关乎你的年龄、外貌、社会地位、健康状态，现在觉得舒适与否、配偶、父母、子女过住怎样的生活，而是一种无所不在的快乐。这样的快乐可以源自内心，也可能出于身外之物，甚至可以毫无来由。我们必须先修持静坐这类的心灵净化法门，让身心摆脱意念与烦恼的无穷干扰，以静坐还原心灵居所的秩序，以正确的呼吸、积极的运动与正确的饮食来强化身体的活力。同时立下并执行感恩、忏悔、希望等心灵誓约的功课，回归内心，为真理的来临、脱胎换骨重生的一刻做好准备。至于内心何时顿悟，则与静坐、饮食、运动或其他外在行为不见得有多少关联，而是全出于我们对人生真相的如实体悟。我常教人以非常简易的手息练习来帮助静坐，我称之为瓶子瑜伽。我们现在就可以一起试试看。你可以躺住或用舒服的姿势坐住，试住尽量延长呼吸的时间，愈久愈好。首先缓缓地吸气，想象自己犹如一个充满光明、正在不断扩张的气球。吸饱气之后，尽可能地将这气息守住，不要让气体轻易漏失。守住你的呼吸，愈久愈好。当你觉得再也无法屏住气息的时候，轻轻地再试住坚持一下，直到无论如何再也守不住时，用力将所有的气一次完全吐出去。这么做至少再重复3次。在手吸同时或稍后，可能还会出现冷、热、刺痛或其他种种的感觉，这些全部无需在意，不要让这些感觉分散了你的注意力。你唯一要做的就是尽量拉长手吸的时间，愈长愈好。这是源自西藏和印度传统的古老瑜伽技巧，用以净化散乱的身心状态。古代的大师们都知道，在身心放松的状态下练习手吸。Kaikari Mudra 是穿越以太层、超越物质存在的意思，是卷舌向上往后深入上颚后部的功法。Kaikari 是空行、飞天的意思， Mudra 则是指身印。身印是指一种姿势、印记。此功法不论是坐、卧、盘、站均可进行。其实卷舌并不容易碰到喉头，进行时只要舌头尽量微贴住后颚即可，全身放松且不需勉强。如向内专注在眉心，可帮助舌头往后深入。这简单的方法可释放脉轮中的负面思维，不论在印度瑜伽、佛教禅坐或太极拳修行时，都是常被使用的方式。练习的方式将舌头向上卷起，朝向小舌，舌头是放松的，沿住口腔顶部的硬腭下滑，不费力地置于鼻中隔背面。熟练之后，舌头会自然而缓慢地顶到鼻咽腔的柔软处。练习时闭起双眼，眼球向内转，望向两眉中间的位置，可以躺住，也可以盘腿坐住练习。修炼者习惯这个身印之后，无论你在做什么，整天都可以练习，也不见得要闭眼。久而久之，这个身印甚至会变得再自然不过，且能持续净化心灵与神经系统。Kaikari 这个字在梵文里意味着在内部空间里翱翔或在以太空间里飞行，是相当合适的身印。当舌头向上飞翔，接触到口腔顶部时，将带来忘我的幸福感。逆舌身印 Kaikari Mudra 做法：将舌头向上向后卷深入咽喉部，双眼向内凝视眉心。原理：1. 舌头向后上方卷，进入上颚后部的洞穴，是3条脉的交汇处，成为空轮。Kaikari 是空行、飞天的意思，让心灵入住于空，消除自我感，不再有相对感，可消除业报 karma。2. 卷舌头是利用形的收摄，来达到气与神经的收摄。向内凝视眉心是利用意念的收摄，来达到心灵入住于空的境界。3. 喉部是中脉、左脉、右脉的交汇处，在瑜伽里是属于5大元素的空元素，所以也成为空轮。这个身印也叫做空轮身印。4. 在瑜伽的观念里，最重要的甘露是指松果体对应顶轮，脑下垂体对应眉心轮的内分泌，其次是甲状腺和副甲状腺对应喉轮的分泌。5. 逆舌身印是借助舌头向上向后卷和双眼向内凝视眉心，来激发并控锁松果体、脑下垂体和甲状腺、副甲状腺的甘露。6. 利用逆舌身印让能量收摄所产生的甘露内分泌是非常精细又有能量，可滋养全身，可使全身充满生命力，并使身心产生巨大的转化，不会生病，不容易死亡。 其实舌头并不容易后卷碰到喉头，可以利用心灵的力量来帮忙。非常专注在眉心时，会有股强烈的吸力吸住舌头，而且不容易放松。越来越专注时，舌头只往后往内深入。深印 Mudra 用的是心念意识的力量，用蛮力是无法达到的。一，先将舌头往外尽量伸出伸长，就像狮子式样。二，接住往后往上卷。三，意识持续专注凝视眉心。在中医理论中，人体胸前的气脉为任脉，后背的气脉为督脉，上颚后部是人体中脉、左脉、右脉的交汇处，也是任督二脉的交汇处。逆舌深印可帮助任督二脉的气脉衔接，促进气血循环，也可减少能量的损耗而养气。从我个人多年的临床观察，逆舌深印能藉由活化迷走神经而强化自律神经系统。迷走神经是第10对脑神经，是脑神经中最长、分布最广的一对，含有感觉、运动、副交感神经纤维，支配呼吸、消化系统中的大部分器官。迷走神经的活化能加强帮助情绪安定的副交感神经，抑制平日过度活跃的交感神经，立即平复焦虑不安的情绪，且反应明显，同时也能改善睡眠状态。这也是为何多年来我常运用在忧郁、焦虑或心跳急促的朋友之紧急处理上，也总能及时改善当下的不适状态。读者朋友们不妨试试。当舌顶上颚时，呼吸会立刻变得深沉缓慢，且自然地由胸式呼吸调整为横膈膜呼吸，此时无法言语，且身体重心下降。借此机会可静心内观，只要单纯的专注于呼吸及舌顶上颚，对眼前进行的活动是清楚明了的，关照念头并让其顺之畅流。即使有杂念，也只是觉察，而不以2分法加以判断，不评断念头的是非或苦乐。手吸能帮助打通体内的气脉。有意思的是，当体内的气脉打通时，人就不再焦虑，甚至连杂念也没了。念头一清净，心境便自然地转为平和，身心进入合一的状态。至此，就连静坐的功力也深了。这是一种最简单的技巧，可以平息身心紊乱，化解静坐时最常见的分心和散乱毛病，不再陷入思绪的漩涡中。
Namaskar. Today I will explain a mild version of Kechari Mudra. There is a practice which is called Kechari Mudra in yoga. It means like traversing ethereal plane, go beyond the material existence, something like this, a fancy name. Mudra means seal or gesture. So we do a special mudra. In Hatha Yoga is a harder version. In Raja Yoga, or the yoga of the mind, is milder version. In the beginning, you may feel a little less benefit. The advanced practitioners, they report that through that mudra you can taste the divine nectar. You're touching the divine nectar and then you become spiritually intoxicated. But there are benefits. There are benefits even a beginner can feel. So what is that mudra? This is your tongue. This is the sensitive side of the tongue with the taste receptors. So what you do, you curl the tongue and you fold the tongue. So the receptive side of the tongue becomes locked on itself. And then you rise and then you touch with the lower side of the tongue, you touch the palate. So you curl the tongue as far as you can and touch the palate. So that is called Kechari Mudra. What does it give? What benefits are there? Even if you are not meditating, just sitting like this and then you do that and you observe the changes of your mind, you'll feel like you are moving in the void, flying in the void, flying in space. The thoughts become less. So this effect we like in meditation. You're moving in the void. There is one center there in the mouth, inside the mouth. It is called Lalana chakra. So this gesture of curling the tongue and touching the Lalana chakra activates the spiritual energy and creates that feeling of void, emptiness, and it helps in meditation. Also, when you curl the tongue, you lock very important organ of perception. The tongue, the nose, they're all connected. So when the tongue is in a normal position, you like to smell, you like to taste, you like to see, hear, and to perceive the world through your senses. But when you curl the tongue, when you lock the tongue, some switching happens in the mind, and you're not perceiving anymore. You are turning your perception inwards, and you fly. You fly in the inner space. That's what is Khechari Mudra. So it is important when you sit for meditation, you curl your tongue as far as possible, and then you touch the palate. And then sit like that and meditate. In the beginning there may be some salivation and you feel inconvenient. Just ignore it. After some time the body will understand, no, this saliva is not necessary. He is not going to eat anything or drink anything. There's no need to secrete the saliva. So maybe there will be like 1 week discomfort, but later on you will forget about your tongue and there will be no salivation. Everything will be normal. But you will be able to do this mudra and enjoy deeper meditation. You will enjoy better pratyahara. Pratyahara means detachment, withdrawal from the objective world. So you will be able to better know subjective world. Very useful, important for meditation.
Is a practice in traditional yogic and tantric systems that involves the extension and stretching of the tongue. It is considered an advanced practice and should be learned under the guidance of an experienced teacher or guru. Khechari Mudra is believed to have various benefits, both physical and spiritual. However, it is important to note that the information provided here is purely for educational purposes, and it is recommended to seek guidance from a qualified instructor before attempting this practice. Here's a general overview of how Khechari Mudra is performed. 1. Preparation. Begin by sitting in a comfortable meditative posture, such as cross-legged on the floor or in a seated position on a cushion. Close your eyes and take a few moments to relax and center yourself through deep breathing or meditation. 2. Tongue extension. Start by extending your tongue as far back as possible towards the soft palate at the back of your mouth. Initially, you may only be able to reach the base of the tongue or the uvula. Over time, with consistent practice, the tongue can gradually be extended further. 3. Tongue insertion. Once you have extended the tongue as far back as possible, gently insert the tip of the tongue into the nasal cavity. This may require patience and regular practice to achieve. Start with a small insertion and gradually increase it over time. Be gentle and listen to your body, avoiding any discomfort or strain. 4. Finding the nectar. As the tip of the tongue touches the area inside the nasal cavity, practitioners often describe experiencing a secretion or taste of nectar-like substance. This sensation is associated with the activation of the higher centers of consciousness. However, it's important to note that this experience may not be immediate and may vary from person to person.
Partimos de la posición inicial, lengua tocando los dientes, recorremos el paladar hasta atrás, inclinamos la cabecita, pasamos debajo de la úvula, con la lengua relajada, y ahora para poder penetrar necesitamos tensar la lengua en punta de lanza y haciendo el movimiento de serpiente penetrar en la cavidad nasal. Observamos la lengua en perfecto Khechari.
Now, what I'm going to reveal has been a closely guarded secret in many traditions of yoga. It's not what you might think. Not something like standing on your head, like this, or doing the lotus at the same time, or not even doing it all in the snow, like this. No, this technique involves something smaller. your tongue. Did you see the tongue in my mouth? No. How could you? I made it disappear. Let's look again, shall we? This time, did you see what happened? Well, let's take a closer look. As you could see, I actually didn't make my tongue disappear. I just turned it upwards and into the nasal cavity. This is what is called the Kachari Mudra. So, what is the Kachari Mudra? Well, it's a secret technique of yoga referred to in old yoga manuscripts. Do not explain in detail. For example, in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, often considered the Bible of Hatha Yoga. This technique is not described in clear wording, and sometimes hidden in allegory, behind words describing something which we yogis obviously wouldn't attach any kind of spiritual significance to. Eating cow meat. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Putting your tongue up where you have snot, or nasal mucus to be precise. Isn't that a little distasteful? Nasty even? Nah, to me it's actually the opposite. As you're able to clean your nasal cavity with your tongue, so no bacteria can stay and develop. And without Kachari, the mucus would eventually drop down into your throat anyways. So there's no escaping the mucus, just a choice of how clean you want it to be. Either way, this technique is not for cleaning your nasal cavity. It's a technique described in old yoga manuscripts as leading to immortality. Be that as it may, and those esoteric descriptions aside, I myself use it when holding my breath. Since if you go up the nasal cavity and press your tongue against the roof of the nasal cavity, you prevent any air from leaking out through the nose. This way creating a vacuum where no air is accidentally let out. Well now, this actually leads back to those esoteric descriptions, since breath holding is a means in Hatha Yoga for making the body stronger, maybe even undying. I suspect this is what has sparked the esoteric descriptions that Kachari makes you immortal, since without it you can't work with your breath as needed. You might notice that this video is coming to an end, and I am yet to offer any practical advice on how to actually achieve the Kachari Mudra. No, I have not saved the best for last. I have actually saved it for another video, since cramming theory and practice into one video would make it all too long, and not long in a good way, like a Kachari tongue. So, if you're interested in how to do this secret technique, and how I myself achieved it in only 2 weeks, check out part 2, over here. In this video, I will reveal to you how I achieved Kachari Mudra in only 14 days, something which usually is described as taking many years, and what I will reveal to you about this mudra haven't been revealed before. It is based on my own practice. This is a follow-up to my first video about Kachari Mudra. If you haven't watched that already, then watch that first, by clicking up here. Now, as described in the first video, Kachari Mudra involves putting your tongue up into the nasal cavity. You might think that to do this requires a very long tongue, but this is not the case, or at least your tongue doesn't need to be that long before, because the practice I'm about to describe will actually make your tongue seem longer. If I do this, my tongue might seem like a Jen Simmons tongue, but this is all due to the lingual frenulum, or the lack of it more precisely. You see, the lingual frenulum is that little strip of flesh which ordinarily ties your tongue to the floor of the mouth. But when doing the practice I'm about to describe, the lingual frenulum will actually grow away a little, and thus make your tongue more mobile. Before proceeding, a word of caution is in order. This is an advanced yoga technique, and I can't be held responsible for any injuries you might suffer if you decide to try it out. Even though I myself have been doing it for many years, without any injuries or adverse effects, you should keep in mind that I'm a highly trained, not professional, but yogi, and you shouldn't try to replicate my practice if you don't feel ready. Always use your own common sense. Now, with that disclaimer out of the way, what I did to achieve Kachari Mudra in just 2 weeks was, first of all, to press and hold my tongue back in the mouth with all the muscles of the tongue, and do this all the time throughout the day, when not eating or talking, we say. Often I would also take my hands and massage my tongue to gently press it even further back in the mouth. After doing this for a little more than a week, I would actually manage to, with the help of the hands, to get my tongue up into the nasal cavity. As a side note, in the beginning when managing to get your tongue up into the nasal cavity, you will feel quite sensitive there, and sometimes feel like sneezing. Just know that this will go away with time, as your nasal cavity adjusts to your tongue being there. And you will be able to effortlessly clean your nasal cavity from mucus, as mentioned in the first video. Now, I will come to the ingenious part, which to my knowledge haven't been revealed before. Once I managed to get my tongue up into the nasal cavity, the problem was that my advances would decrease overnight, and I still couldn't do Kachari naturally without using my hands. You see, in the beginning when starting to do this practice, small tears will start to form on the lingual frenulum, and as those start to heal, tissue will grow back overnight. In the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, there's described a technique of putting small amounts of salt into those tears, and there's even descriptions of using a sharp knife to cut the frenulum a little each day. I never did any of this, and I dare say that such mutilations are not necessary. No, not at all. What I did was simply to keep my tongue up in the nasal cavity overnight while I slept. This way I would keep my gains, and the tissue of the lingual frenulum wouldn't grow back again overnight. Though the tears will still heal, don't worry. After doing this for a few nights, I would actually manage to get my tongue up into the nasal cavity without using my hands, like this. There are a few things you should keep in mind when beginning your practice of sleeping like this. First of all, don't sleep on your back, as the tongue would then constrict too much of the airflow. Or at least avoid doing this until you have intuitively learned where to place your tongue in the nasal cavity for optimal airflow. So sleep lying on either of your sides in the beginning of this practice, and don't put the tongue all the way to that nasal septum which separates the openings of the nostrils, or putting the tongue into one of those openings. Just put the tongue a little bit up the nasal cavity. I won't lie to you, sleeping this way will feel somewhat odd in the beginning, and you might feel that your breathing is a little constricted. And sometimes you'd even wake up in the middle of the night and wonder what's stuck in my throat, before coming to your senses. But in time, I assure you, it will all feel very natural, and you will learn just where to place your tongue in the nasal cavity to not feel constricted at all. Now, in the beginning when starting to sleep like this, you might also unconsciously drop out of Kachari from time to time during the night. But don't lose sleep over it, pun intended. Just put the tongue back again as soon as you become aware that you dropped out, and drift back to sleep again. Over time, you will yourself learn how to instinctively keep your tongue up there all the night, just as I have, I'm sure. I must also add that if you have a tendency of snoring and breathing through your mouth when sleeping, doing Kechari while sleeping offers an indirect advantage, since this practice blocks your mouth and only makes it possible to breathe through your nose. And as you might have heard elsewhere, your nose acts like a filter, trapping bacteria, and breathing through it thus offers more health benefits as compared to breathing through your mouth. Another thing to keep in mind is to make sure that the palatine uvula falls down, like this. If the palatine uvula doesn't fall down, the uvula could be a little dry in the morning and sticking to your tongue, which would make it a little uncomfortable, making the uvula unstick and getting the tongue down from the nasal cavity in the morning again. When starting this practice, it will also feel a bit uncomfortable with saliva building up in your mouth, and you might have to get out of Kechari to swallow from time to time during the night. But eventually you will get used to it and be able to sleep a whole night without having to swallow many times, if any at all. Now, aside from the benefits of nose breathing, what would you use the Kechari Mudra? Well, as stated in my first video on Kechari Mudra, I use it for breath holding, since after a little while, when your lingual frenulum has grown back even more, you'll be able to press your tongue up towards the nasal roof, and this way block any air from leaking out or getting in. In a future video, I will describe how exactly to utilize this in your meditation, and what kind of breathing and visualization practices could be used together with Kechari. Until then, thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the comment section down below. Also make sure to like and subscribe.